Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L with a video I wanted to talk about the issues I had with Fire Emblem Engage, the most recent mainline entry in the Fire Emblem series. Now, right off the bat, I just want to be clear that I think Fire Emblem Engage is a great game. The gameplay is really fun. It improved, I think, the weapon triangle. I didn't break mechanic, have to worry about getting broken yourselves. That adds a whole new dynamic. Boss battles are improved. The fact that they have like multiple health bars means it's a lot easier to just cheese maps, just like war boss killer, kill like one turn. And the fact there's multiple bosses adds whole new dynamic. The visuals I think are improved. Art style might, be personal preference, but compared to the previous Switch Fire Emblem game, Three Houses, just like the cutscenes and that sort of thing, they were very like dull, drab colors, just that sort of thing. I think Engage improved upon it a lot. Soundtrack is awesome, as is par for the series. Granted, a lot of them are just kind of remixes of older songs, but I mean, those are still good. And the new songs I ever think are really good as well. Difficulty is a lot more balanced, again, especially compared to the previous Fire Emblem game. Three Houses Maddening just really felt unplay tested. Just make everything an ambush spawn, multiply stats by 7, just call it a day. Hard mode is challenging enough to still be fun, and maddening. It does feel like challenging, maybe a little bit unfun at times, but it definitely feels leagues more balanced than some of the more infamous Fire Emblem difficulties like Awakening Lunatic Plus or Shadow Dragon Hard 5 or again Three Houses Maddening. I think the characters themselves were decent. Again, this might be personal preference, but let's read the support. Some funny ones, some touching ones. They're fine. They're not like, Arc and A games where every character's super forgettable. I don't even think some of the plot twists, there's some of the writing, some of the plot twists, or plot revelations, they work well enough. And as ham-fisted as it was, like having just like this big nostalgia bait, like all the previous heroes from Fire Emblem games, I can't deny it was fun to see many of them with voice acting for the first time if you discount heroes. So yeah, I really liked it. About on par, I'd say, with the GBA Fire Emblem games, which, if you know me, that's really high praise. But I won't deny that there are issues, and I do think it's definitely valid if someone doesn't, just click with this game. Also, as it's the most recent Fire Emblem mainline game, I think talking about the issues could be interesting. We could speculate about what they might like improve in the next one. So, that out of the way, let's just get on with the list in no particular order. Starting with the writing. Personally, I think the story of Fire Emblem Engage is, for the most part, it's fine. Just, silly little adventure, collect the MacGuffins, defeat Evil Dragon. You've seen it before. Binding Blade story with Roy, pretty simple. Marth, Shadow Dragon, very simple. Even like the Valentia games, like Shadows of Valentia, the actual story, like plot lines and premise itself, it's simple, but it works. I think the issue is like the writing, like especially compared to a game like Shadows of Valentia, where the writing felt like very believable, like what actual real people how would say these things. Fire Emblem Engage just has a big like writing problem, I'd say, especially towards like the latter half of the game, characters dying, but then just going on this big lengthy monologue before they die, that sort of thing. I don't want to harp about the plot too much. One, because it's kind of been done to death, and two, like I said, Fire Emblem games in general, at best, I kind of feel like they have like a decent story. So having a very simplistic story, it's not a big issue for me, but I understand how it be for others. I think it's more of like a writing issue. And on a somewhat related note, Fire Emblem Engage does have a little bit of ludonarrative dissonance. I don't want to keep comparing it to Three Houses because they are like two different games, but when it becomes relevant, I'll mention it. Like, if you look at Three Houses, well, I do want to say I think that Engage, for the most part, improves upon Three Houses in this aspect. And Three Houses, crests were something that just kind of defined entire like social hierarchies, basically person's status. But in gameplay, they just had like a small percent chance to add a little bit of might when you use a combat art or preserve a magic, and they weren't that impactful. And same thing with like the heroes relics, all the lore and writing is supposed to say, oh, only the person with the correct crest can use them. But really, anyone with a crest can use a hero's relic without consequences. They just don't get to use the combat art. Even if they don't have a crest, they just take like 10 damage. As as opposed to Engage, where big emphasis is played on just how powerful the rings are. The good guys and the bad guys are both like fighting after them. And you can see firsthand, both using them and when enemies use them against them, just how powerful they truly are. I think for the most part, it's a good improvement, but there are issues. For one, it has the whole, like, I've been defeated, but I can't fall here thing that Three Houses had a problem with. Engage didn't really help at all. Also, it's just an issue with, like, the Divine Paralogs. We're supposed to have, like, a friendly training match with one of the emblems to unlock their further strength. But if you're playing in Classic mode, your characters can actually die, which they do have a few maps, I think, like, especially early on, like, Chapter 2 or so, you fight Libera. Permadeath isn't a feature, because it's just, like, it's a friendly match. It makes sense in the story why you don't fall forever if you die forever if you fall there. I think they could have used that for the paralogs, and then just have something like a small reward if you clear it without losing any units. Something small enough so if you do lose any units, not that bad, but big enough that you'd want to try. I'm thinking something like stat boosters. You can make them related to the emblems you're fighting, like Marth is kind of the poster boy for the series. He could give Dragon Herbs +1 to every stat if you defeat him without losing the units. Celica could give Spirit Dust. Sigurd could give Boots. Leaf could give a Body Ring, increased Constitution. Roy could give a Seraph Robe, increased HP. Lynn could give Speed Wings. Erica gives Secret Book. Ike could give Energy Drop. Micaiah could give a Talisman. Lucina could give a Goddess Icon. Then Byleth, just being a former mercenary, could give, like, some gold. Yeah, just kind of irks me the wrong way when, like, I think the maps themselves are fine. Again, they're like a fun reference, and playing through them is fine. It's just characters falling in battle here just never really sat well with me. Then there's the issue of the last few maps. This is pretty common in many Fire Emblem games, but I think it hits Engage especially hard, both the gameplay and the writing / story. Like, up until this point, it's been a fun romp, collect the MacGuffin, save the world. Then when you get to, like, last 5-ish or so chapters, they start throwing, like, all these, like, plot twists. All the bad guys have been, like, cartoonishly evil, and they get defeated. They have this whole lengthy monologue before they die. And so, I actually have a sympathetic story. I'm a sad orphan, like, that sort of thing. More importantly, just the gameplay. I think after you defeat, like, Gris in Chapter 20, it just becomes a very large amount of, like, enemy spams, extremely high stats units, and you're just kind of encourage them to, like, not play them straight out, just kind of, like, cheese the maps. Previously, I thought Thracia 776 was the game that was the worst in terms of, like, falling off and, like, dipping in quality, but Engage definitely gives it a run for its money. I think Engage is a little bit better because, when Thracia 776, it's just like Warp Leaf, Warp Boss Killer, kill boss, seize with Leaf. That's it, one turn. Engage, even if you just kind of want to cheese it, you do have to put a little more thought and strategy behind it. It's like, okay, engage with Akaya, rewarp these 5 units, then dance, then, like, rescue these 5 units, then use Lyn's Astro Storm to, like, get the boss, use Celica's Warp Ragnarok, then do the Byleth Goddess Dance, like that sort of thing. So it's more entertaining, but it's still just last few maps, the gameplay falls off a lot. Then I have the Somnial. I don't think I didn't have as much issue with it as some people did, but I definitely understand why. It just kind of feels like tedious padding. You want to get back to the action. I think someone said it best when it's like pretty much all the things in the Somnial you could just make into a menu like the Tellius games, like an option for a readout, option for shop, just a button to collect all the gems that a Somnial leaves for you. And then you could, like, choose to explore the Somnial if you wish, just to talk to units. But even then, it's like, compared to something like Three Houses, where every character would be commenting on the previous fight or the fight coming up, the characters here barely have anything to say. Like, them commenting on what your current plot progression is the exception, not the norm. So I think this could have been improved. Then I have open reclassing, something I've just never really been a fan of in Fire Emblem, because I feel like it makes all the units just kind of blend and mesh together. Starting with, like, Shadow Dragon's open reclassing system, just becomes difficult to talk about, like, tiering and that sort of thing. Like, you look at the GBA Fire Emblem game, take a unit, like, I don't know, Marcus or something, you use him, you know what you're getting. You know his join time, his base stats, like growth rates, weapon ranks, that's good. But Engage in other games, it's like, we might use X unit, but you try them in this class or that one or this one or that one. It just becomes difficult, I think, to, like, talk about them and tier them accurately, like that sort of thing. And I know it's optional, but I like using units to the fullest of their capabilities. And I like when I'm able to do that and it doesn't feel like overwhelming. I think they could have just given units like maybe like 1 or 2 classes, maybe something like Anna, for example. She could have her standard Berserker class, but she could also reclass to like Mage Knight or Sage, maybe something like that. Only a few units I think really stand out in Engage. I mean, like the Royals and like their siblings because they have unique classes and like Alir, but for the most part, I'm just not a big fan of this system. And kind of on a related note, I have like 2 topics I think just combine nicely into each other, which is Cavalry Units and Sigur's Cantor ability. So Fire Emblem Engage introduced subtypes in addition to like the classes of units. And Cavalry, with maybe the possible exception of Dragon, is the only one that doesn't have any like unique benefit to it. In fact, it only has like negative consequences. You're weak to like horse lane weapons. Like flying units, they don't get affected by terrain, for better or for worse. Mystic units avoid ignore terrain bonuses when attacking with magic. Covert units double their terrain avoid bonuses. Key adepts can chain guard. Backup units have the infamous chain attack. Armored units can't be broken. And then there's Dragon, which its only real benefit is it gets extreme benefits from engaging rings, but I think that kind of is its deal. Plus, Alir, like one other character, are the only dragons in the game, so it's not that impactful. Cavalry units have nothing. I think the biggest way to fix this would just be looking at Sigurd's Cantor ability, which is like so broken and like leagues above the best. Like once you try it, it's just difficult to go back and try it for like anything else. Like you can get 2 skills. Pretty much one of them is, at least for me, it's always going to be like Sigurd's Cantor ability. It's just so powerful. Units, like, when you talk about them, they get divided into like pre-chapter 10 units or post-chapter 10 units because the pre-ones, they might not be as good, but hey, at least they can get Cantor earlier. That sort of thing. I think what they could have just done with Sigurd's Cantor is make it like Lucina's backup ability. Like, it gives Cantor to non-horseback units, and then if you are cavalry, instead of +2, you get +3, just can't not be inheritable. I don't think this would break the game too much, because when you look at, like, discussions about Fire Emblem games, like, improving, say, like, archers or armor knights or thieves, a lot of times they don't factor into the account that the enemies would get these buffs as well. It might make them more annoying to deal with. But since this wouldn't be, like, a global thing for every single enemy, just be cavalry units, I think this would give cavalry units a niche and make Sigurd's Cantor ability less broken. Personal preference here, just the lack of weapon durability. I kind of prefer just weapons breaking. Mainly because this allows the stronger weapons to be more impactful. Like, if they have a set amount of weapon durability, you can make them just strictly better than, like, iron and steel weapons and the like. Whereas, if they don't break, you have to kind of balance them out some other way, usually by, like, heavy penalties to, like, their hit or to their weight or both. Again, this isn't for everyone. Some people don't like weapon durability because they end up just hoarding and never using the better weapons, but I like this system better. I do think it's better than something like Fates, because like in Fates, I never used anything more than like iron or steel weapons, just because the penalties for something beyond just never seemed worth it to me. But I do think I would have preferred like Fire Emblem Engage more if it was built around just weapon durability and like skill being almost strictly better than iron, silver almost being strictly better than steel, and so on. There's also the fact of just weapon ranks. I kind of prefer just, the more you use a weapon, the more you gain weapon EXP, and then your weapon level goes up. But I've seen games work without this. Like, this has the same system as, Fire Emblem Engage has the same weapon class or weapon rank system as Genealogy of the Holy War. And I think that game is built around it, pretty much with like the repair shop, limited weapons. So if they did go with this and go with like the weapons that break, they'd have to like revamp the entire like gold system. So maybe I can understand why they didn't go with that approach. It's like, I'd much prefer a system that's designed around the game's mechanics and just something not prefer, but it's just tacked on there. So I get why. It's just I kind of prefer the other games. This one seems like a personal nitpick. That's because it is, but just being unable to name your forged weapons, I just really love just making like meme or inside jokes or that sort of thing. Like every game with that since Path of Radiance introduced forging allowed you to name the weapons. The Tellius games, Marth's Arcanea games on the DS, Awakening, Fates, and Shadows of Valentia. It's Fire Emblem 9 through 15. You could, once you forge a weapon, you could give it like a goofy nickname, and you can't do that here with its emphasis on previous titles. It doesn't allow that feature, especially again since weapons don't break. You can have it with you for a while. It just kind of was upsetting to me. Not a huge deal, but worth mentioning. Next, I have the bond rings. I like the idea behind them. I just don't like their implementation. Being able to see more characters from past Fire Emblem entries is good, and like being able to read up on them, but just feeling like a gambling system, it's just annoying. Now, granted, you don't spend real life money in this like a gacha game, but being better than that is a pretty low bar. If you want something like Owen's Dire Thunder ability, you can spend like an hour or two just like fishing for it. It's just very tedious. And I wish they could have just done something, even if it meant having fewer bond rings, you not have like a C, B, A, an S rank. You have to get all of them if you want all the information on the character. You just buy them outright, even if they are like a little more expensive. Like, there might not be 10, but instead of just fetching them 1,000 bond fragments at a time, it's just, hey, Owen's bond ring, once you have a leaf, it's available for like 1,000 bond fragments. Especially because you end up not using that many of them anyway, unless you're going like a self-imposed challenge run. They're always competing with your actual emblem rings, so you don't have a need for too many of them. And plus, just some of the abilities are good, like Owen's Dire Thunder. Some of them are like alright, like Finn's Miracle, but some of them are just like so niche that they're pretty much never going to come up. Like Ceph's Battle-wise, it's fun, it's cute, flavorful. Like you add +1 crit every time you defeat an enemy, a reference to Genealogy of the Holy War, how you can gain a crit on weapons. But since that doesn't carry over the next battle, and it stacks, it caps at 10, like at best you're looking at 1 in 10 chance for this to be impactful after you defeated 10 enemies in like a single map. Just stuff like that. I think they could have improved the abilities a little bit. I get they didn't want to make them overpowered, but I think they've improved them a little bit, even if it meant having fewer bond rings overall, and just not have a gacha system. And last, I have the DLC. Saved it for last because this isn't going to affect all players. Starting like right off the bat, the Xenolog the paralogs, you get to get the emblem bracelets. The levels of the enemies you face there are directly scaled to the strength of your army. I consider talking about this just like as a problem engage, like the skirmishes, because previously it was linked to the location. Like you fight a skirmish in a chapter like, 2 or 3 or something, it's going to be a lot weaker than something like 20. And it makes it difficult to grind up if that's your thing. But I never competed. I never went in any skirmishes just in my playthroughs, just because I'm not a big fan of it. But I understand if you do want to grind your army or having difficulty with the chapter, then the skirmish is even more difficult than the chapter you're having trouble with. It's frustrating. I don't like the mechanic. Just beyond that, though, it has the same problem with the paralogs and emblems, just like the ludonarrative dissonance. Like, oh, it's supposed to be just a friendly, like, test of your strength sort of thing, but they end up, like, can potentially kill your units. There's also the fact of playing, like, on hard or, like, maddening or even hard. You want to give yourself a bit of a challenge, but you do want to use the fun new abilities. You're forced to play through them every time you play the game, and you get experience as you do that. And that can be good, but if you want to give yourself more of a challenge, you might not want it, but you still want to get just the fun, cool new items, like that sort of thing. That can be frustrating. Like it ends up trivializing, like midway through, like a maddening mode, like those chapters. Then there's the Fell Xenolog itself, which is problematic in many areas. One, if you want the characters from this, you have to play through it every time you do the game. Unlike Three Houses, Ashes Wolf campaign, you play it once and just the characters join you because it's non-canon. And just the fact that your characters in here, they have set classes in inventory, which, sounds good, like a side campaign, but then they still have their skills and like bond ranks with their emblems. So it is tied directly to your campaign. It's just easy or normal mode in Fell Xenolog. You basically just pretty much auto battle, at least a good portion of it, be fine. And then like hard and like especially maddening, you have to like build a team specifically like designed around this, bring in like, cause like, if you have your skills like, plus growth rates or plus EXP, they're completely worthless here. You have to like build a team specifically around Xenolog to like having a chance of beating on Madden. It just ends up being like a huge mess. I don't regret getting it. I did enjoy seeing the new characters and the new bond bracelets, but it definitely suffered a lot in its implementation. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching. Again, just want to say I do really like Fire Emblem Engage, but these kind of things can be fun to, to talk about because a bit of harmless fun. That said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. This is Enigmatic Mr. L signing out.